Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Justin the Food Entrepreneur Show. I'm Justin Bizzarro. I'm your host. That's Bizzarro. For anyone who's out there, you can find us on Instagram at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs, or you can find me personally at Justin Bizzarro. You can find this show and the other shows that we do on Spotify or Apple Podcasts or anywhere else you grow yourself through podcasts. So thank you, everyone, for listening in. Thank you for supporting us as we are rolling out lots of episodes. You can see they're coming out every other day right now. Those will probably increase to every day as we get in the summer. We have some previously recorded episodes. We're layering into new recorded episodes. And thank you guys for the support. So we have 57 interviews lined up already for this spring. It's going very well, and we're already off to another one. So I have Sticky Fingers Candy back with us. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. It's been almost 2 years since we talked about your adventures into freeze-dried candy, and I think you were doing pop-ups then and, sort of storefronting and getting into the storefront and things like that. So a lot has happened in 2 years, I'm sure. So where would you like to begin? First, tell us who you are, where we can find you online, and sort of your background just a little bit as a refresher.
Yeah, so definitely a lot has changed in the past 2 years. Right now, you can find us mainly on TikTok and Etsy. Really been putting a lot of focus on that. And still, pushing candy, doing the candy business, making new creations. I've been in food industry for almost 15 years, and I started this candy company because of COVID, like everyone else that started all these random businesses. And it kind of took off. I used to do all the farmers markets, and I used to do a bunch of pop-ups. And in the last 2 years, a lot has changed from those first days.
Yeah, let's start there. I mean, because everyone can go back and listen to the original episode. I'll even pull it up for the audience and let you guys know what number episode that was, so everyone can go back and look. But you can type in Sticky Fingers Candy and it'll pop up. But it was episode 313, and we released it on May 11th, 2023. So that gives you sort of an idea of how much time has gone by and how much to an entrepreneur that time is significant. So yeah, the floor is yours.
Yeah, so I was doing tons and tons of pop-ups. Pretty much any event that I can do, I was doing, so I could get my name and my brand out there. And after, about a year and a half, even less time than that, after the first season of spring to winter, where most all of the events happen, I did as much as I possibly could, and I learned what events to do and what events not to do. So I gradually started really focusing on the events that worked for me, and then stopped doing all the events that didn't work for me. And eventually I decided about maybe 3-4 months ago, maybe even 5 months ago, to go completely online and not do any events at all unless they're huge.
So
for my area, huge. Not necessarily like California, huge.
So let's go back a little bit here on this particular topic. Talk to me about how do you gauge whether it's successful? How do you gauge whether it's not successful? How do you sort of gauge what candies are successful, not successful, what freeze-drying candies are working, what freeze-dried candies aren't working? How did you introduce regular candies in sort of to this model? So let's sort of dive back in, because before you were really diving into the freeze-dried candy, that was your main focus and the main attraction of your business. And we know that sort of candy line has grown into its own segment within the candy industry as a whole for candy stores. So talk to me about, let's go back there where you were really focusing on freeze-dried candy and sort of the first transition there, which is sort of you've expanded beyond just that and opened to more. Let's talk about that criteria first and how you sort of came to a larger variety, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So the farmers markets and all the events were doing really, really well. And then all of a sudden, I'm sure that everyone felt it. The economy kind of took a little nosedive and everything got crazy expensive. So the farmers markets really, really started to taper down in sales. Just every market that I was doing that really crushed it before really pretty much died this last season. So I had to make a decision on what I wanted to focus on. And on top of the markets dying, freeze dried candy as a fad was, in my opinion, is also dying. So Skittles came out with their own freeze dried candy, 5 years late. At this point I've been doing candy for almost 5 years, and freeze dried candy was, pretty popular in the beginning of it. And then obviously all the big brands want to come in and get their hands on that money. I really believe that because a lot of people were chasing money, they weren't chasing the passion and the creativity. It really like oversaturated the market. You can go to any farmer's market or any pretty much gas station, grocery store and find Target, and find freeze dried candy. And for me, what that did was it really brought the quality of freeze dried candy down to where people really didn't like it where they were buying it. They would go to Target and they would buy freeze dried candy there. They didn't like it and they would say, "Oh, freeze dried candy is gross," or if they didn't, because of the brands that they were buying in these big box stores. The freeze dried candy that's inside of like Target and whatever other markets they're in, a lot of them aren't the brands of candy. So they've come out with their own candy and then they freeze dry that. So they create their own brand of candy and like formula of candy, and then they freeze dry that candy. So when people go to buy freeze dried Skittles, they're really not getting freeze dried Skittles. They're getting an off brand of a Skittle like candy that's been freeze dried. And then if you want to go beyond just the Skittles type candy, they were doing the more puffy candy. So it'd be like the worms, the peach rings, and those are very hard to ship. I might have mentioned that in the last episode, actually, that smaller companies do have an advantage in the fact that it doesn't ship very well. And the shelf life is actually not very long because it's more like a cotton candy where they do kind of shrink and deflate over time. But since everything is so delicate and everyone's touching it on the shelves, it just turns to dust. So it really put, in my opinion, a bad taste in candy consumers' mouth to buy this candy. On top of that, it's crazy expensive. And you know what a Skittle tastes like. So paying $10 for a 2-ounce pack of Skittles, when you know what a Skittle tastes like, you're at that point really paying for the experience. And so you have to decide, is $10 worth, do you value that experience for $10? And for me, as if I put myself into the shoes of a consumer, I would not buy that. And it's not that I can't produce the candy or that I don't feel that it's fair to the consumer. I kind of feel like I'm ripping them off at a certain point now that it's kind of been everywhere and, kind of oversaturated. I don't feel a passion for it any longer. And so I put my focus into other types of candy that I actually have more passion for and more creativity in sense of like creating more flavors. With freeze dried candy, I just kind of throw it on a tray and press a button. At that time, I'm like more passionate about creating something new and giving people an experience. And now that everyone has had that experience, I wanted to create a new experience for people with my company. So that's where I'm at right now, is creating a new experience for other people.
Let's talk about this a little bit more because I think you're on to something that's very important. What we often miss, and it's the key triangle to humanity also, is even in our restaurants, at least for food. I mean, I'll say it's true everywhere, but that would be making a very broad statement. But part of the thing is people want to be entertained, meaning they want an experience. That's an E. They want to be educated in some way when they get their meals or their food or their candy or whatever. There has to be some sort of nugget of information that empowers them to feel greater than they are when they left versus when they came. Okay, I don't know why, but that ability to put some knowledge into a human matters. It's a sticky thing, pun intended, sticky fingers, but it is a sticking point. And the other part is sort of exposure. Are you exposing them to something new? Is there something that's interesting? Is their exposure upsetting to them? Does it fit into their financial, comforter? When we're just talking about $10 for Skittles, I can barely bring myself to pay $2.50. So that's, considering when we were kids, I could buy a pack of Skittles for 75 cents, and they were the big packs, the big king size they were called. I think they may still have them. I don't know. But those were some of the things that we're talking about. So I think that's, in order to attract people, in order to create loyalty, there has to be the constant focus on those 3 points. Just like as a human, we have to constantly be growing in those 3 areas: that education, that exposure, and that experience, in life. And so I think that that's sort of what we're talking about here. And in regards to popularity, I would say that I've seen what you're talking about. I mean, you've seen convenience stores, gas stations bring in freeze-dried candies of much lesser quality. And what they tend to do is things tend to be epidemics. Well, that's what I'm going to call it. Like a blue raspberry epidemic, where everyone wants blue raspberry and then all of a sudden it'll fall off. Or lemon is a big thing here in Colorado. Lemon flavored candies. All the kids are lemon flavored. I see all over the place. Kids always grabbing it. So it is temporary, but I do see lemon dried freeze candy in 7-Eleven also, and people buying it. But I agree with you, it's a lesser quality because of the price issue. It becomes a negotiation where they're lessening the quality of the ingredients in order to squeeze it into the price point. So
Yeah, and I don't really think that it's fair to the consumer as well when you're buying a freeze-dried candy pack and most of it is dust because so many people have touched it, and then if that was my brand on a shelf, that looks bad on me as a company. So I had expanded into about 20 different local retailers in my area, and at the end of the day, I decided that it wasn't really worth it to me. Well, number one, I wasn't really making money on wholesale orders because a lot of shops, they need these margins because their stores are so incredibly slow. They don't have any foot traffic. So they're trying to use your brand to get people in and they want to make money too. So they can't overprice these items because there's only so much money somebody will spend on a piece of candy. And I just found that most of these retailers, they want it for such a low cost that I wasn't making any money off of it. And then they don't order very often. So not only do they not order very often, when they do order, they want it like right now, right? We need it now. And when I'm already not making money on it because it takes them 3, 4, or 5 months to sell 80 pieces of candy, it doesn't, the business model for me personally did not make sense to continue in that way.
So how do you pivot from there? You obviously want to stay in candy because you have. So how do you pivot? How do you stay in business? You've had the farmer market issue, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. I'm going to come back to it, and the farmers market things and what's going on in the United States, because I think it's a valid point economically to look at and what the problems it's causing for the small business owners, particularly in food and beverage. But anyway, so how do you pivot if that's not your business model anymore, the farmer's market or the commercial route going through a third party, in this case, a general store or something?
So luckily, when I first started doing freeze-dried candy, I only focused on online sales. So when the farmers markets, I decided that they weren't a good fit for me any longer as of now. I already have a bit of experience selling online. So pivoting to an online market was a little bit easy for me in particular because I've already have the experience from previous businesses that I've done.
So let's talk about this sort of stacking of skills. Like you had a previous skill, now you have a new skill, now you're combining them. So how do you do it? There's photography involved, there's building a website, there's what candies am I going to offer, how am I going to ship all of it? So like help me wrap my head around all this, because this is a different pivot. You're building something and now you're trying to grab people in a much larger pond, all fighting for similar space. So let's talk about that, especially since you have experience in it.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of it comes down to just not being afraid to do other things, but it also comes down to experience, right? Doing a bunch of different things. I think the main thing that has helped me the most is paying for advice and cutting corners with that advice, right? So I really am fond of joining groups of and paying for groups that have the same interests that I do. And not necessarily like candy groups, but like marketing groups and not necessarily like groups on Facebook. I'm talking like actual like mentored course groups, right? So I'm paying to learn what these people have done already. And I think that has really given me the biggest advantage is paying people to teach me what to do.
I love that. I
And
mean,
that I think that is very hard for a lot of business owners to get around. I think if people were to pay money to learn something more often, they would achieve their goals not only faster, but they would just achieve them in general.
well, and when we pay for it, I think we have a little more tendency to complete it, but
Yeah, you have
not
some
always.
skin in the game. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go back to the farmers market thing quickly. I just want to touch upon it because I do think that because of the increase in cost of living, increase in food costs, the things that are going on without salaries, et cetera, keeping up with that increase, particularly in the United States, I would say that it is causing a strain on the smaller business and farmers markets and sort of that spending.
Oh, 100%.
And I know that multiple people have felt it. I know that the delivery business is slower for a lot of people. It depends on, where we are in the country, but also I do know that when the economy functions the way it's functioning right now, something has to give and people stop spending money somewhere or start tightening the way they spend it. Or, a cucumber now is a cheaper cucumber. And so maybe not as high quality, but that's sort of what we're talking about here. And in that process, the higher quality, smaller individuals tend to suffer. So I just wanted to just touch on that. And I've heard it from some other entrepreneurs as well that are coming on the show that they've experienced some smaller market squeezes, I would say, like that as well. So I just want to footnote that for everyone, anchor it, because it is a topic that we will talk about or hear about and how people are riding their way through that. So
100%. Like the farmers market this past season, I know like bakers who were selling out the previous season thought they were going to have to double up what they were going to be selling, and they had to cut back by 50%. So just in that, like that's telling you right away. And bakers usually do the best at the farmers markets. So when a baker is cutting down their product by 50% and still not selling out, there's something going on, and then you hear people walking by looking at products and they go, man, I can't spend $5 on a head of garlic, like on one little thing of garlic, on one bulb of garlic. And I completely understand that, eggs are going for $12 at the farmer's market. You can, $5 at the farmer's markets. I mean, at the grocery store is already expensive when we were paying $2, at the natural grocers previously. So
I agree with you. So, talk to me about, like, let's anchor one other thing. What's your website where they can go see what you've done, see what we're talking about now? Where can they find you on all your different social media accounts? What are the handles?
So right now I focus mainly on TikTok. My TikTok is Sticky Fingers Candy, and I have a TikTok shop on there. You can buy all the popular candy that I sell. I also focus on Etsy. I have a pretty popular shop on Etsy, again, Sticky Fingers Candy. I think it's Sticky Fingers Candy USA. I'm not really super fond my own website at the moment. When you get your own website, you have to drive your own traffic to it. And if you have time or you can pay people to do it, then that's great. But driving traffic to a website is much more difficult than people think it is. And at this moment, I don't have time to really focus on creating that funnel. So at this time, I really like focusing on the TikTok and the Etsy where the customer base is there. You just have to put the product in front of them.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a lot of examples. Some people have found success on Amazon. Again, that not everything's for
Right.
everyone. I think it varies by where it is, what price makes sense, where the model is. I do like your website. I also like the Etsy thing. Did you try different avenues before you landed on the TikTok avenue or the Etsy? Were you trying an Instagram store or a Facebook store, and it just happened that these ones turn out the best? Like, help me
Yeah.
understand all of that.
So I actually tried opening an Instagram and a Facebook shop, but for whatever reason, I cannot get verified for it. But one day I was actually having a meeting with some local marketing, creative filmers, videographers and whatnot. And they made a really good point to me, which when I thought about it, made me choose the platforms that I chose. So what we were discussing, we were talking about all the platforms and this, that, and the other. And he said, Facebook is for community groups where you build a community, you can create a group and you can, funnel people to that community. People can have conversations in the post and whatever. It's very like much more community based. And then Instagram is much more like business to business. I personally don't have very many customers that support me on Instagram. It's mostly all businesses. And then TikTok is where people shop. So people go to TikTok to buy things. I think TikTok has a huge community of purchasers and sellers, which I think is pretty great. They want one to win more than the other when you get deeper into TikTok. They want one to win more than the other, but I still think that it's a good community overall for buyers, sellers, and creators because everyone's making money on it, right? Like everyone's getting paid in that whole system because like on Instagram, if you sell something, you're just selling a one product to a person. But on TikTok, if you sell a product to someone, they can turn around, create a video, and then make money on that product. And then now you've literally given a person a job, right? You're giving people money, you're helping other people grow. And I think that's what's really special about TikTok. It's not just that I'm selling something to people and it's a huge market in that regard. It's that at the end of the day, I can help other people create their own income And that's huge, especially right now.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I didn't know you could do that. I'm not hugely familiar with TikTok. I've struggled with it a little bit, stronger on Instagram and Facebook and like that meta
Yeah.
universe thing. But
I think it's our age though, right?
yeah,
Our age grew up on Facebook, on MySpace, Facebook,
yeah,
Instagram. So we have that mentality. And it actually is really difficult to get into TikTok. And that's where getting paid coaches helps, right? So I I'm also in regard to like creating content and things like that. I'm good at choosing products. So that's my thing, but I'm not very good at like creating the content and like doing all of those things because I don't understand the younger people because I'm old, right? I mean, I'm not like crazy old, but you know, I'm
yeah.
not 20 anymore, you know?
Yeah.
But
It's
and
harder to
so like
predict trends when you're not living in
yeah,
that generation.
yeah, exactly. And so when you kind of learn what TikTok wants, then it's easier to give it to them because TikTok wants certain things. They don't necessarily want what Instagram has to offer, you know? So, like your video on Instagram may not even get any views on TikTok
Yeah.
because it's just such a different thing, right? And so, learning how to grow an audience, learning how to talk to the camera, learning how to, make video edits and doing all these random little things, like it seems so easy and like, duh, you got to do that. But you have to really hear someone tell you to do that before you do it for some reason, like you don't trust yourself. So you have to hear someone that's already been successful at it tell you to do it so you can trust what you do. And I think that's really what the groups and paying people, mentors, coaches, whatever, to help you along because they really do kind of tell you these little things that you're like, oh, that's so dumb though, but it really does make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. There's certain things, and not necessarily listening to the majority of the world is pretty important when it comes to stuff related to social media or what's cool and not cool. I've learned that like just because the outside world sees it one way doesn't mean that the way you have to go to market as a business and use these tools in the way that they're meant to be designed for an entrepreneur or business is significantly different than the cool person just surfing, liking the businesses or
Right.
liking the artists. And so I think there's two significant ways to look at it. And even into the trenches where we go, and I agree with you. There's social media is definitely layers. LinkedIn is one thing and Facebook's another and so on and so forth. And I agree with you. There's a lot of community in Facebook, but as a business owner, we have to chase the avenues that help our business or help the individuals we're trying to help or make sure our customers are getting the best service and product possible. I think that that's important. I think we often do a value proposition and our customers pay the price for sure. So I really do like the Etsy page. Also, I like the way, I don't even know what to call them anymore. The photos for each little thing is and the graphics and all of those type of things. So, I mean, I get how Etsy
Yeah.
simplifies it for you on a major way, plus discounts, plus
So,
being able to do sales and all that. Go ahead.
well, so even just posting, even just those little thumbnails, there's an entire thought process behind how you post photos on Etsy and why they rise to the top and some don't. So even on Etsy, you have to know every one of these platforms' algorithms. It's that, like Etsy is completely a different, I'm going to say like, I'm going to kind of like give it a like human, what is it called? Personification or whatever onto some platforms, but like Etsy, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, they're all different avatars. They're all different people and they're all looking for something different. And so even when you're choosing like pictures to put on Etsy, you have to understand people's psychology before you even post that photo. on it, and like how the eye works when they're looking at a computer screen. Where do their eyes travel on a computer screen first? Why do people click on this photo and not that photo when it's the same product? So there's, even all within these platforms, like, you have to know these types of things as well to make it successful. Because in my opinion, Etsy is probably the worst place to try to start a business on. Like, in my opinion, I don't know if this is true or not, but I really feel like Etsy makes more money on the people who don't make any sales than the people who actually do make sales, because people make one sale a month, no sales a month, one sale every 2 months. That's pretty crazy to me. So you really, when, I can be making 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 sales a day, even if we're selling the same product. But it's all because of the psychology from behind the computer on who's buying it, and also what the company is choosing to put on these platforms.
Yeah, it's interesting. I agree with you. And each one's different, and you sort of have to spend time with one before you go on to the next one. And it takes time. And
yeah,
if you really want to get good at it in your business, it's just taking the time to spend in it. It's like me doing social media for 20 years and then actually doing it the last 2. The results in my social media accounts are significantly different. Maybe last 3, whatever it's been, the build up. But the way I handled it versus just pushing information out to understanding what is necessary, what each platform is it looking for creation and digital creation and content and knowledge? Or is it looking for connections? Is it looking for more people to group together? All of that stuff matters in those algorithms. And just to be an extreme example we used the other day on a totally different topic, but it's obvious that DoorDash wants you to deliver the food as fast as possible, as fresh as possible, as high quality as possible, and do every order you get. There's no doubt about it. You can game the system all you want. The reality is we know that there's 2 purposes. Get it there as fast as possible, get it there as highest quality as possible, and then have all the orders that come through DoorDash be delivered. Those are the 3 goals. And if you're a DoorDasher and you figure out that those are the 3 goals, and you should try to accept everything and do everything, all of a sudden you're getting a $150 tip catering orders all the time.
Right.
And your margins are way significantly higher, way higher than the guy who's going around gaming the system.
Right.
Yes.
But you also have to, have a mentality. You have to have a mentality of paying attention to the trends of your own business, though.
Exactly.
And that's where that information comes from, right?
Yeah.
The person that's doing that's getting all the highest tips, that's getting the best accounts, that's doing this, he's found, or they have found the trend in what they're doing. And that's because they're mindful. And being mindful is like a key to growing it, and a key to like giving the platforms what they want, is being mindful of what you're doing and of your business.
I agree. So you've spent a lot of time in these worlds. You mentioned previous businesses, but now in this business. So would you say, and we talked about paying mentors or paying coaches or paying teachers, whatever it is, I agree with you. It is very important when money's on the game and they have to perform and there's a transaction involved. I agree. On both parties' sake, holding each other accountable is a much better deal. And even though we want things for free, but anytime you give anything to anyone for free, they don't stay very long. I've tried coaching people who are doing it voluntarily. The success rate and the sticky rate is significantly different than when someone pays $1,800 a month.
100%.
So,
yeah, you have to. It's because you don't want to lose that $1,800. So now you have to do what you said you're going to do.
Exactly.
Whereas, you're giving someone something, and most people take advantage of it, and most people do not act right. So the reason that they're trying to get it for free or doing all this already is because they haven't acted on anything that they said they were going to do previously in their entire life. And that's why they're asking for it now,
Yeah,
in my
exactly.
opinion.
I agree with you
So,
100%. That's why the negotiation is now, before I've ever put in the work ethic, let me negotiate the deal that I'm going to have, because I say I'm going to do it, and whether I do it or not is no big deal anymore because I already got it. And that's the
and
problem
there's
in
a
the workforce
study.
right now. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I was reading some study of when you do a lot of research on something and you study it a lot, you have this feeling that you've already accomplished the goal that you set out to do in the beginning, if that makes sense. So like if I'm trying to get better at, let's say, drawing, I'm looking at a bunch of graffiti right now. So if I like wanted to get better at graffiti and I suck right now at it, but I do all of this research on how to do this and that and do the shadows and the foreground and the background and the negative space and I did all this research, but I never act on it. It's because I've already feel like I've accomplished and I've already gotten better at what I tried to do, but you haven't actually put it into reality. So a lot of people feel that they already accomplished the goal even though they haven't even started it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. There's this defeatist thing that happens, and it's not there's victory, but it's really victory. It's really defeat disguised as victory. It's a trick. I don't know. In my world, I would say it's a trick the devil plays. It's one of those deceptive things where
Yeah.
it's a trick of the mind, where it gets fulfillment temporarily, and that's enough to stop us from chasing growth, our own growth, possibly human changing growth or world changing growth for the world around us, or our legacy. But we get a weird thing, and not everything is meant for us to do. I get it. Like every once in a while we research somewhere like that's not for me and we give up, but it's becoming, with the amount of knowledge and information that comes at us in the world, I think more and more humans have a lot of interests that temporarily are just interests and not much follow through because the fixation is temporary.
Yeah.
So,
And when you said like that's what's happening in the job force, totally. Like I really, now that I'm growing my business, I'm having to hire people to do work, right? And finding people that value themselves at the proper wage is, you cannot find that. People think that they are worth so much more than what they're worth, but they can't perform at the value that they're giving themselves. So in sales, right, the reason like it's so irritating to me in that regard is because in sales, you need to give more value than you're getting. You would never make a sale if you undervalue and charge a bunch of money, right? Like you would never make, your business would never run that way.
yeah, because
And
perception is
so,
everything.
yeah. And so their employees and perceived value right now is so high
Yeah.
and the performance is so low
Yeah.
that business owners in my, when I talk to them, like they don't want it, it's not worth the money. They rather do it themselves, because like the employees are so overvalued themselves, right? And as a business owner and someone who's like hustled their whole life and had 3 jobs and done all this, I'm like, that to me is a crazy mentality, like for me to make more money, I have to provide more value than what I'm being given now, or I have to put more value onto myself, which like learning something, giving myself a skill, doing those types of things to where I can get more money because I'm more valuable now.
Yeah, I agree. And it's long term. Yeah, it has to be something. What we don't understand, I don't think now, is humans, we pick up on patterns, whether we realize it or not, consciously or subconsciously. And when someone has discipline and commitment and consistency in doing a job well, or when they aren't doing it well, learning and having that consistency till they do it well, or asking questions and questions and questions till they doing it well, not to be in, because some people get annoyed. I'm like, ask me as many questions as you want. I don't care what I'm doing. It seems ridiculous to some people because they're like, how do you deal with being interrupted. It's part of being an entrepreneur. Departmentalizing is one of the greatest skills I ever learned from my father. He's just like, I'm like, how do you deal with all the people, the phone ringing, coming at you constantly, 24/7 employees? He's like, compartmentalize it, turn it off, set it aside, deal with what's in front of you, turn that on, turn it off when it's done, and turn back on the thing you were at. And I can do it. And sometimes I'll literally be able to start the next thing as I'm turning off the second thing. So it looks like I'm doing two things at once. But the reality is what I'm doing is I'm exiting one thing and entering another. But
you're also an expert. You're also an expert in both of the things.
Yes, correct.
Right?
Correct.
Whereas the people that are around you are not an expert in all of the things.
No. And that's one of the things. Well, one, I think I had to learn it. I had to be willing to learn, and I had to be willing to pay for education and mentorship before I was ever worthy of someone giving it to me. I mean, even that's still arguable. And
I think that in regard to what we were talking about with the wanting to learn and all of that stuff, I don't really feel I can blame the employees. No. I really, really, really think it's the educational system, because where I am anyway, the younger generation is just completely different than the generation I grew up in. Like, I grew up where when I was in high school, everyone already had 2 jobs, and the good job was in and out because they paid you really well and you got insurance and they worked with your scheduling. I never worked at In and Out, but that was like the job everyone in high school wanted. And not only did they work at In and Out, they worked at, Marshall's or wherever else too. And now it's like people, they want like very part-time jobs at the most money per hour. But it's, in my opinion, it's like that is because the educational system is so bad. A lot of these kids are coming out of school and not having like basic skills. Like some people that I've hired, they can't even divide by 2. And that's not a joke. Like I can't teach math. Like, I'm not a mathematician, I'm not a mathematician. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not none of that. So for me to have to stop, teach math, and then teach you what I need you to do, I can't do that. That's above my own pay grade, like, so I think in that regard, like a lot of these kids are coming out of school with 0 skills. So then when you put them into a job, they literally just have no thoughts because it's so overwhelming. Like, so when you're like, ask me any question, I really do think there's literally no questions to be asked.
Yeah, that's the problem.
Like, there's nothing there. If there's no like critical thinking skills. Like, if you can't even divide by 2 and you can't use a scale to weigh something, like, that is so elementary. How are you going to count a drawer of money? How are you going to do inventory for literally any job? How are you going to measure a recipe for any place you want to work? Like, when you have to do tips and count out your tips at a restaurant, how are you going to do that? And so it's like, what are these kids going to do when they literally don't even have the skills to do the most basic entry level jobs?
Yeah, and there's 2 points here for me. The first one is, like, when I was growing up, there was this weird trend of no one thought handwriting was important anymore in cursive or whatever because of the computers and whatever. And I get it, they record and whatever, but handwriting still, for me, because it's a second way of capturing information, you hear it and you're writing it, becomes a way for my photographic memory to memorize things. Just saying, it's a lot easier to go to school and sit in class and learn that way than having to crunch 2,000 pages in seminary in a week. Just saying.
Yeah.
So like,
Even
or in my MBA. So that's one just for everyone is usually what the trend is, the opportunities in the opposite. So anyone out there who cares about their livelihood or wants to change their generational legacy, it's learning what the rest of the humans aren't doing because that's where the opportunity is going to go. And the second part is the generational thing. I mean, I saw it working in family businesses. The difference in importance. Our generation was technology. How important is it technology? The generation before us is a little bit different. The 70s, 60s, the ups and downs of all the crises. So they were more financially frugal comparatively, where we're more like, oh, there's information and data and compartmentalize and spreadsheets and capture the information and analyze it. And the next generation is more like, gosh, it's crazy to say this, but I find that I really have to guide them and educate them in things that weren't normally the responsibility of the business.
Yeah.
And part of me wonders, and I don't know if this is true or not, and I've asked my dad about it in some ways, and some other mentors that I have that are older, like in their 70s and 80s, about this. Because what happens as a new generation really takes hold, a real lump sum generation, like a strong generation, both in number and in personality, take over a workforce or come into it, it's a totally different animal. And so does that change? You know, for us, it was computers. We came into businesses wanting everything to be on computers and spreadsheets. And that's the only way we could really understand information anymore, is digitalized. But not to the extent that it is now. I mean, still thinking about how I had to go through Encyclopedia Britannica to find something, and now it takes 2 seconds to find it, and it's not only 6 sentences long, it's pages upon pages, just blows my mind. But I don't
but
know.
it also might be inaccurate.
Correct. Correct. And
So
so,
then you have to think about,
yeah.
then you have to go and kind of synthesize all of this other information to really like get the accurate information.
Yeah, agreed. And I think that that's the important part of social media, to take it back full loop, is the ability for the general public and the general consumers to be sort of the check and balance on product quality, product authenticity, all of those things. It's not pretty because it's the wild, wild west still right now, because there's no real way of organizing all of it and all the feedback that comes back through social media towards business owners or individuals trying to build brands or whatever it is. But at the same time, on the other end, the accountability side, I think there are ways that there is goodness in it from that perspective. However, back to the employees, I don't know what the answer is, but I do know that the more I used to rely on humans or qualified kids coming out of college to do things, or education, in the ways that I needed it to function as a business person, a lot of that, weirdly, even though I never thought I would use it, AI has started to fill those gaps for me. The low hanging fruits that were jobs that no one wants, that no one really wants to work for, internships, ability to be educated by an entrepreneur and no interest in it, like, you know, here and there. All right, those jobs are gone, you know, so.
And the thing is, too,
What
I'll bring it back
happens?
to social media as well, because with the employees slash, all of this, is that a lot of these employees, they want to be content creators. They want to be social media, whatever. But they don't realize that being a content creator is being a salesperson. So they don't know how to sell a product, and they don't know how to sell themselves, because they still haven't done the necessary research and learning that it takes to become a content creator, because content creation is sales. You're selling yourself, or you're selling a product. And so you're like, oh, I can just make videos and make money. Well, not really. I mean, you can make videos, but they have to be what people want to watch. And if you don't have that skill, then it's pointless. And if you're not going to take the time to learn the skill, then it's also pointless. So all of these little things that you have to do, they all take skills beyond the surface of what you're looking at. You know, like, I want to be a content creator. Well, you're going to have to learn psychology. You're going to have to learn editing. You're going to have to learn filming. You're going to have to learn how to sell, how to make thumbnails for the product. You have to learn how to write copy. You have to learn how to create a transcript, or any kind of script. Like, you have to be a copywriter now. So now you have to be good at grammar. You have to be good at speaking. So now you need public speaking skills. So there's like so many different layers to the most simple thing that a lot of people want to do. And that's why so many people fail. But all the ones that do all of these things and learn all of these skills are the ones that are making $60 million a year, because they've learned all of these skills. And it may not seem like they've learned all of these skills, but it's just because it's literally become a part of who they are. Like, they are their business. They are their brand.
Yeah, and that's part of what I'm learning as well. It goes to a whole new level. And I've had to listen, I've had to learn from kids that are building businesses or in social media, and there's a skill that they have that's out of this world.
Yeah.
I just hope everyone realizes that true value is what you can give or what you can offer. So value creation and digital creation, that it takes a lot of time and it takes a lot of effort, and it takes getting your formula correct that works for you. And copying someone's or doing someone else's or whatever doesn't necessarily work. I've seen that. And while you gain a lot of followers, you're not gaining the hundreds of thousands that other people are gaining by being authentic to themselves. So,
yeah.
Not an expert here for sure, but I do know that in any environment, in any human network, the ability to connect and add value and not just expect someone to give you value because you feel you're valuable is something to be really conscious of. The word collaboration, the reason it matters so much in social media is because it's a mutual beneficial relationship, to your other point, where both individuals doing it benefit and so does the host, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whoever. So, and you're cross-pollinating followers and everything else, which makes all the Instagrams and whatever more happy.
Right, exactly.
So
if everyone's making money, then everyone's happy.
Yes, exactly. That's the point now, in any way they can contribute to that, and content generation and businesses, transactions being done or whatever. That's what a lot of these are, is how can they create the connectivity that they were built on in the first place, but at a whole new level in business. So if you're in business or an entrepreneur, those tools are really hyper ways of connecting to people on a whole new level you can never imagine. And I will never understand this. Everyone's going to be like, well, do you know how much spam I get? Do you know how much spam I got when email got turned on, when there was no filters? Do you have any idea when businesses published our email addresses publicly? You have any idea how much work I had to do? It's the same in social media. Don't turn it off. You don't want to not get messages. I don't care how many following, how tired you are of collaboration. Opportunity to grow bigger than you could ever imagined, or grow as a human bigger in abundance than you could ever imagine, is there. But you can't, universal laws, you got to be open. You can set filters. You can block people. You can restrict it. But you've got to be proactive, and you've got to manage it like it's your kid. I'm sorry, but there's no other way around it. And the best I've seen, and the guys who do it the best, men, women, businesses, whatever, are the ones who literally, it is an extension of who they are.
Yes.
And people are, oh my God, that's never a good thing. But it is when it is your line of business. When it is, you're in podcasting, you're in social media, you're in entrepreneurism, you're in that as an entrepreneur in this day and age, you are your business. there is no lot of distance. Social media, public things, our story is part of our business now. It is public knowledge. Everyone knows Colonel Sanders was in his like 60s when he started KFC. I doubt anyone doesn't know that anymore. Right. So like, I'm sure it's a story for everyone. Like, it's become like, don't ever tell a lie like George Washington or whatever. But it's like we're talking the real deal here. These are stories. Your story, our stories as entrepreneurs could be that inspirational. We shouldn't give up, and they do matter in the sense that they are now the brand of our business. Also, Colonel Sanders is a brand of his business. We know who Dave is, even though it's Wendy's. We know who Ray Kroc is for McDonald's for the most part. At least generationally. I'm not sure how much the next generation knows or doesn't know. I'm hoping, based on all the information out there, they know more about history and stuff than we do, but I don't know.
But it also becomes an extension of like, it's an extension of your personality too, like when I'm walking down the street, people are like, oh, hey, candy lady. They don't know my name, but they know that I have candy and they know I sell it. So like I've kind of like become beyond Taren, right? I'm now like a face of something, and that really like puts you kind of in like your lane, right? You can't act a certain way before you say something. You have to be like, oh, are people gonna follow this or unfollow this? Like, or do I want to say it because it's polarizing, and will it bring people closer to me and then get rid of the people who aren't close to me? Or like you go out to dinner with people and all you can talk about is your business. But it's because that's literally all you do. It's all you think about. Even when you try not to, you're thinking about it. Like the most of the time, the only time you stop thinking about your business is when you're like exercising, playing some kind of sport, like where you're really doing something that's taking your mind and focusing it on something that is in front of you at the moment. And when you're a business owner, everything that's in front of you that you're focusing on in the moment is your business until you make the time to focus on something that is not your business. And then you go back to thinking about it anyway, because literally just a part of who you are.
Yeah, and
people don't want it,
No,
okay.
I agree with you. I think it's part of like the closer we tie our core values and actually who we are and understand who we are to our businesses and the extensions of who we are, and align all of it together, the better off we are. And sometimes we don't want to show that to the world. We're scared of it. And that's often we think like, why is my business not selling? I'm doing all this stuff and I'm going crazy. I'm getting all the mentors. And actually the bump in the road is us, the individual entrepreneur, the leader at the helm. And so like, I think that self-reflection and since we're on the topic, and social media and the extension of ourselves is so important. And it is worth seeing what people like and don't like. It doesn't mean it's not a good idea. What you're doing is bad or it's a rejection. It just means right now it's not relevant. Anything you create can become relevant later. Every painter on the planet that now is worth $1 billion that weren't worth dirt when they were alive during the Renaissance will tell you that story.
And you have to have experience to get that, right? You have to have all of this experience to make money. Like you can't just walk out somewhere and be like, I know, I'm rich now. Like I make, $1 million a year or whatever, like you have the people who are making the money that most people want to make is because they are that person 24 hours a day, like business people at the very top, even like I have family members that have been like VPs, presidents of like big corporation companies. We're on vacation and they're still taking phone calls. It's because that's who they are. Like work doesn't stop because you're not there. Like it's an extension of who you are. It's not like a 9-to-5 job where you clock in and you clock out and you still get paid. If a business owner isn't being a business owner, they're not getting money. So when all of this, it's like, it just it becomes who you are, and the more knowledge that you gather, and the more value you put on yourself, and the more people that you get to know, and the more hobbies you have, that's where like you start growing.
Yeah, I
Like,
agree with that. I think the right entrepreneur, the right work ethic is often it doesn't matter how much money's coming in. It's always like I'm on the clock. Like I'm not making money unless I'm on the clock. It's that hourly clock in mentality because that's where a lot of us started. That's our roots are humble. And if they weren't
right,
humble at first over trial and tribulation of trying to get businesses off the ground and the failure that naturally happens in business,
right,
you will get there. And if you want to be an entrepreneur truly, it takes a dedication and it is a choice daily, in most cases, daily to stay persistent, daily to get up and do it, daily when you have multiple people just grinding you from a customer service standpoint because you just all of a sudden a couple of things went wrong and it happened, you know, things tend to go wrong in threes. And at least in my case, and it would just, when you have one customer, two more are right around the corner and
oh
they're
yeah.
coming. And so,
and
it
and with
is
Amazon,
24/7. Go ahead.
and then with like Amazon, right, being a small business owner and doing customer service is so much different than it was before, because Amazon has set this like standard of it gets here right away, and if it doesn't get here, I get it for free. And then every business, or every, so many customers translate that to every business they go to, when a small business just does not work like that, you know? So when you're having to deal with all the customers too that are like giving you a hard time in the middle of, I don't know, well, it was just Christmas right now. So during the holidays, when you're a small business, they see you online and they think you're huge, right? They're like, oh, they've done all these sales. They're on the internet. All these people are talking about them. They must be a giant company. When really it's just like you and three family members trying to bust out a bunch of stuff, you know? Like, and so they think that like, oh, they can afford to just give me free stuff, when it just like does not work like that anymore. So I feel like being in customer service now is so annoying. Because I was growing up, I was in customer service, and in more like corporate businesses as well. And it's like now having to deal with customer service is so irritating, because everyone thinks that we can just give stuff for free because Amazon set that standard. When, like, and that's a loss to us if we just sending you a bunch of everyone can just say they didn't receive a package. So it's like Amazon never had put it onto the third party, which would be like USPS or UPS or FedEx not delivering the package. They put it on the person who sold you the package, that it's their fault. So now when you're having to deal with all this customer service stuff, you're having to deal with like trying to explain to people that you're not Amazon, and you can't really like be on that standard of Amazon. But if you're not on that standard of Amazon, a lot of people don't even want to buy your product, but they want to support small business, but they don't want to buy a product that they're going to have to wait a few extra days for. So it's like all of this stuff is like so convoluted and like so different than when I was younger, and you have to learn all of this stuff too.
No, I remember you had to wait 2 weeks to get your delivery. I order soccer shoes. They
Yeah,
would be a few weeks before they get there because who
I
wants to pay
forget I
for
ordered
express
stuff.
service? And yeah,
And half the
exactly.
time, like, you get it and it's a surprise because you totally forgot you bought it in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think it's interesting. We're definitely in a pivoting situation post COVID, new generations coming into the workforce. Some of them were in isolation for like 2 years because of COVID, which I mean, there's a lot of difference there and it'll be interesting to see how it swings back. Thank God I'll hopefully be very old by that point and not dealing with the work, maybe semi-retired or in some way. But I think these are all conscious things. These are all things that entrepreneurs have to be aware of. And the good ones, whether we're aware we're doing it or not, we are tapped into everywhere. And the other part of using social media to grow our businesses is it allows us to keep our fingers on the pulse on what's going on in the world around us.
Right.
So
And
go ahead.
that's how I pivoted my candy from freeze dried candy to other candy, was that social media, right? Watching the trends and then being a part of the candy industry for a long time as well. But like watching the trends online, seeing what people are buying, and you can really, if you can move fast enough, then you can catch, some of the trends that are happening, or kind of like make a spin-off of a trend that is happening.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that that's, the more you're tapped in, and it's an easy way to get information, and market research, and to see what you're doing well or what others are doing well. Doesn't mean mimic it. It just means that there's methods there that may be able to stay true to who you are, that you may be able to use to build your businesses, and there's lots of
Right.
educators out there and people that, for the right, agreeable fee or transaction or whatever, there's a lot of free stuff on social media for sure to help you get started. But
Oh,
if you
yeah.
really want to level up, it takes intent and time and dedication and putting that intention into the universe, which usually takes transactions, in
Yes,
my opinion.
100%.
So,
Yeah,
right.
I mean,
Go ahead.
with transactions though, it's not just about like monetary transactions, because giving is receiving and receiving is giving.
Yeah.
So like in all the ways, like even if you're like, when people are like, oh, can I have this for, quote unquote free, like it can still be free, but you have to also give, right? So what would giving be if I'm giving something for free? It's respecting my time. It's doing what you say you're going to do, putting in the effort when you're not in front of me. Those types of things go really far in when you're asking someone to do something for free or teach you something for free, right? So like a lot of people just want free, but you can still have free, but it's still going to cost you something, right? I say nothing in life is free, but that doesn't mean it's money. It can be other things.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of ways to help people and help each other and do things. So, and speaking of which, if you guys are enjoying the episodes and you like the episodes that are here, please share, follow, pass it along, word of mouth. The goal is to help any entrepreneurs out there, anyone wanting to be an entrepreneur, particularly in the food, beverage, farming, nutrition space, hospitality space. That's mainly what we talk about here, but leadership as well. A lot of leadership, a lot of entrepreneurship, spirituality, doing the right thing, living by core values in your businesses. So keep sharing. I appreciate all the love, guys, the likes, the loves, the comments, the subscribes, follows, whatever it is, depending on the platform you're listening in. So thank you guys for doing that and continuing to support the entrepreneurs who are on the show, as well as support the show itself. So is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we wrap things up?
No, that was a great talk, and I really enjoyed speaking to you again, and hopefully people got some good information out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Where can they find you on social media again? Just so they can find you again.
TikTok, Sticky Fingers Candy Shop, and Etsy, Sticky Fingers Candy USA.
Perfect. I recommend you guys look at the Etsy page. I love it. Thank you, everyone, for listening in. I love you guys. You can find us on social media at Justin the Food Entrepreneurs or at Justin Bizzarro. You can also find this show and the other shows we do on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you grow yourself through podcasts. So thank you, everyone, and we're out.